We've got three variants that are now raging throughout the world. The first is the UK variant, which is more communicable by 50 to 80% based on whose math you're using. Now, as long as you get vaccinated, that's fine. The immune response that the vaccination generates is 10 times as good as what you get from natural immunity. It works versus this variant. It works versus all the variants. So as long as you can get your shots, you're good. But the new variant is already the dominant strain circulating in Europe and the United States. And by the time we get to the second week of April, it will be the dominant strain globally. Second, the very nature of the vaccination program is problematic. Because if you get one shot, but not the second one for whatever reason, you have created kind of a petri dish for the virus to learn and how to adapt. Now, again, in the United States, I'm not too worried. We're showing an excellent schedule for people getting both shots, well over 95%. But in the rest of the world, I'm very concerned. I mean, look at the United Kingdom. They've been giving out as many shots per person as we have, but they've prioritized getting one shot in everyone first. That's creating a breeding ground that we really don't need. Third, the South African variant is cross-communicable with rodents. And there are mice and rats in every city that humans live in, which means it's never going away because we can't eradicate those populations. So it will always be there on the edge, which means we will always need booster shots forever. And we will always have people in our communities who refuse to get the vaccines who will now be getting COVID over and over and over. The variant I'm most concerned about is the Brazilian one, because it at least in part bypasses pre-existing immunity. Now, again, if you can get the vaccine, you're fine. In fact, we're already testing in phase 3 trials booster vaccines that specifically address all known variants. But if you cannot get vaccinated by July 1st, this strain will be global. Which means that North America and only North America can recover soon. The Europeans will not be able to finish their vaccinations till the end of the year. Most of the developing world will not be able to start theirs until next year. And these variants, because of their insidiousness and because of their communicability, are likely to creep back into East Asia very easily. So North America recovers starting in the third quarter, and nobody else has a chance. Now, there are 5 vaccines that are out there right now. Oh, by the way, this is William Shakespeare. Like, literally, that's the dude's name. He's the second person in the UK to get the vaccine. Now, we've got 5 variants. The first 2, Pfizer and Moderna, these are the mRNA formula. They are, a lot of people have concerns about these because they think them of as new technology. They're not. They're actually based on technology that's 30 years old. This is gene therapy just in a shot form. Some folks are afraid it's going to alter your DNA or prevent you from having kids or change your kids. No, it doesn't do that. If you want to change somebody's genomic sequence, you have to inject them when they're a zygote. And while none of us are, always accused of acting our age, I don't think any of us are zygotes. The AstraZeneca one is the one that's been in the news of late because it's, I don't know, there's some concerns that it doesn't work as well as people thought. I can't comment on that specifically. I can tell you that AZ has never even applied for approval with the Food and Drug Administration for use in the United States because their data's kind of crap. They had a problem during their phase 3 trial where a bunch of people got only a half a dose instead of a full dose. So they went back and gave more people another half a dose or another full dose, but they didn't do it in a large enough chunk of the studies to reach the numbers that the FDA required. So instead of having one big study, they had like 6 small ones. And because of that, the US is like, we'll work with the other ones until you figure that out. Novavax just applied and got approved in Canada. It's likely to be their dominant shot moving forward. And then the Johnson & Johnson one is the one I'm really excited about. It's the only one that's a single shot formula once and done, and it can be stored in a refrigerator, while the mRNA ones have to be stored in a freezer. So J&J is likely the one that's going to vaccinate most of the human population. Now, what this all tells me is right now, assuming no additional purchases, by the time we get to May 1st, there will be enough vaccines in distribution in the United States to fully vaccinate every American adult. We are likely to be able to get vaccines on a walk-in basis as soon as April 10. So this is almost done here. We'll then have a little bit of vaccine diplomacy with Canada and Mexico. We're actually shipping them some of our AstraZeneca shots right now. And both Mexico and Canada will then be fully immune probably by the end of July, maybe moving into mid-August for the Mexicans. And then we're done. Start worrying about boosters. But for the rest of the world, this is just the beginning. In fact, for the rest of the world, we're not even halfway. So the North American economic bloc recovers. But for the most part, no one else does. Now, say what you will about President Trump. One of the things he absolutely got right with his trade policy. And he set us up perfectly for this world that we're moving into. We have 5 trade deals: Mexico, Canada, South Korea, Japan, and the United Kingdom. Of those, the United Kingdom one is still in negotiation. It'll probably be finished this year. The others aren't simply signed, they're ratified, they've been implemented. And these are the 5 countries that you would want to be associated with in this world we're moving into. Collectively, they're the majority of our trade portfolio. Mexico, Canada, and the United Kingdom are going to be done with vaccinations on a schedule roughly in line with us. Korea and Japan have been very successful at keeping themselves virus-free. And as soon as they get the vaccinations, you know they're going to be effective at distributing them. And that's it. It's done. For everyone else, though, no. I want to focus on 2 specific trading partners so you have an idea what's coming on. Now, there are a lot of political disputes that we have with the Chinese. They are not going away. But there's a big strategic problem that the Chinese have that most people tend to overlook. And it's the islands on this map: Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore. The Chinese call them the first island chain. And there has never been a point in Chinese history where the Chinese have been able to push past the chain and interact economically with the wider world, ever, with one exception. Right now, in the American-led order, because the Chinese were a Cold War ally and everyone is on the same side in the US-led order. All the US has to do, if the goal is to destroy China as a nation, is go home. And some version of that is on offer. For the Europeans, it's a numbers game. Now, this shows the ratio of people over age 65 to children. If you're in blue, you have more children. Blue and green, you have more children. If you're in yellow, orange, or red, you have more retirees. The United States, demographically speaking, is a very young country. We only have 4 states that have more retirees than children, and they're kind of the states you would expect. I mean, 3 of those are basically retirement communities anyway. So remember, blue is good, red is bad. Here's Europe. Europe aged past the point of demographic recovery 30 years ago, which means they've run out of young people to purchase the goods that they make. The EU is now an export union, and an export union cannot survive in a world without easy access to consumption-based markets in order to sell their products. A trade war with the Europeans was coming this year, regardless of who won the election back in November. Let's talk manufacturing. This is total value-added manufacturing in the United States. The arrows indicate where the value-added parts come from. The numbers indicate their value in billions, and they're color-coded based on their likelihood of surviving a world where the United States is not holding up the ceiling. Anything that's green is fine. Anything in yellow, figure a quarter of the components by value aren't going to make it. Orange, half, and red, write it off. The US has a lot of green, a lot of yellow, and no red. Now, that doesn't mean we're immune to what's coming, but when the total GDP exposure for the American economy is only about 10, 12%, that's not all that bad. We can grow through that, particularly with some help from the Mexicans. But the Germans can't.